Welcome to the channel, the NUMIS Hunter, and today, my friends, we are diving into something so extraordinary, so mind-blowing, so absolutely jaw-dropping that by the time this video is over, you're going to look at every single penny in your pocket with completely different eyes. Because what if I told you that a coin, a tiny little 1-cent piece, a coin that most people drop on the ground and never bother to pick up, a coin that gets lost in couch cushions and forgotten in old jars is actually worth $99 million. Yes, you heard that right. $99 million, and the year on that coin is 1987, a year that most people remember for music, for movies, for pop culture, but not for coins, never for coins. And yet here we are, talking about a 1987 Lincoln Memorial cent that has sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic world. And the crazy part, the absolutely insane part, is that this coin looks almost identical to every other penny minted in 1987. Has the same copper color, the same Lincoln profile on the obverse, the same Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, the same size, the same weight, almost the same everything. And yet, hidden within its existence is a secret so powerful, so rare, so historically significant that collectors around the world have been chasing it with a desperation that borders on obsession. And before we go any further, I need you to do one thing right now. I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because we're not just talking about one coin today. No. We have a lineup of coins in this video that will absolutely shatter your understanding of what pocket change can be worth. And each coin we cover is more shocking than the last. The stories get wilder, the values get higher, the history gets deeper, and the chances that one of these coins might actually be sitting in your home, in your drawer, in your old coin jar, those chances are more real than you think. So do not go anywhere. Do not skip ahead, because every single second of this video is building towards something extraordinary. Now let us talk about the 1987 1 cent and why it carries a value that could make even the wealthiest collectors in the world pause and take a deep breath. The year 1987 was, on the surface, a completely ordinary year for the United States Mint. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both pumping out billions of pennies, literally billions, to meet the circulation demands of a growing economy. And when you produce coins in those kinds of numbers, when the machines are running day and night, when the dies are striking metal at incredible speeds, when the quality control workers are doing their best, but the sheer volume is overwhelming. Mistakes happen, errors slip through, anomalies get pressed into metal and sent out into the world before anyone realizes what has occurred. And that is exactly what happened with this extraordinary 1987 Lincoln cent. Because what makes this coin worth $99 million is not just one thing. It is a combination of factors so rare, so perfectly aligned, so statistically improbable that experts who have spent their entire careers studying coins have described finding one as being akin to being struck by lightning while holding a winning lottery ticket. And the first factor is the strike error. Now most people think a penny is a penny. You put the blank planchet in the machine, the die comes down, the image gets pressed into the metal, done. But what happens when the planchet is not quite right? What happens when the metal composition is slightly off? What happens when the die itself has a unique characteristic that was never supposed to be there? And that is where the 1987 Lincoln cent becomes something truly special, because certain specimens of this coin were struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank piece of metal that went into the coin press was not the standard copper-plated zinc that the mint was using at that time, and instead these coins were pressed on experimental or leftover planchets from earlier periods or from test runs. And the result is a coin that looks like a penny but behaves like something else entirely, a coin with different weight, different composition, different magnetic properties, different everything. And when a coin like that makes it through quality control, when it somehow escapes the melting pot and gets released into circulation, it becomes a numismatic unicorn, a once-in-a-generation find that collectors will spend entire lifetimes searching for. Now let us talk about the history of the Lincoln cent itself, Because to truly understand why the 1987 version of this coin can reach such astronomical values, you need to understand the legacy it carries. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909, designed by the brilliant sculptor Victor David Brenner. And it was the first American coin to ever feature the portrait of a real historical person on its face. Before 1909, American coins featured allegorical figures, symbols of liberty and freedom, but Lincoln changed everything. And from that moment in 1909 forward, the Lincoln cent became one of the most beloved, most collected, most studied coins in American numismatic history. And over the decades, certain years of the Lincoln cent became legendary for their errors and rarities. The 1909 SVDB, the 1914D, the 1922 plain, the 1943 copper, the 1955 double die. These coins are not just valuable pieces of metal. They are stories pressed into copper and zinc. They are accidents of history that became treasures. And the 1987 Lincoln cent, with its particular combination of errors and anomalies, joins that legendary lineage. It steps into a tradition of remarkable mistakes that the numismatic community has elevated to the status of holy grails. And the reason the value is so extraordinary, the reason we're talking about $99 million, is because of the convergence of multiple factors that happened simultaneously on this particular coin, and each factor individually would make it valuable. But together they create something that transcends ordinary rarity and enters the realm of the virtually impossible. Consider the double die effect, which occurs when the hub that creates the working die makes more than one impression that is slightly misaligned. And the result on the coin is a doubling of design elements that is visible to the naked eye, letters that appear to have shadows, numbers that look like they are shaking, images that seem to vibrate with a ghost of themselves. And a 1987 cent with a strong double die obverse combined with a wrong planchet error is the kind of coin that makes auction houses call emergency meetings, that makes dealers reach for their phones at 2 in the morning, that makes collectors who have never cried over anything in their lives suddenly feel their eyes get wet. And beyond the double die and the wrong planchet, there's also the question of condition, because the value we are talking about, that staggering $99 million figure, is associated with specimens that have been preserved in mint state, coins that left the press, and somehow, through luck or through a collector's careful hands, never circulated, never got scratched or worn or damaged, never touched another coin in a bag or a register, and arrive in the modern era looking exactly as they did on the day they were made. And a coin like that in that condition with those errors is not just rare, it is singular. There may be only one such coin in existence. And when there's only one of something in the entire world, and there are wealthy, passionate collectors who absolutely must have it, the price that gets paid can reach numbers that seem like they belong in a different reality entirely. Let us also talk about the discovery story of these coins, because the way rare coins are found is often as remarkable as the coins themselves. And you have to imagine the ordinary person, the grandmother cleaning out a basement, the teenager emptying a piggy bank, the estate sale worker sorting through a lifetime of accumulated belongings. Who picks up what looks like a regular 1987 penny and almost drops it in a donation jar? And something makes them pause. Maybe the weight feels slightly wrong. Maybe the color is just a hair different. Maybe they catch a glint of light on the edge that makes them look twice, and they hold it up and they squint and they think that does not look quite right, and they put it in their pocket instead of spending it. And weeks later, they show it to a coin dealer who starts breathing a little faster. And the dealer calls an expert who drives 3 hours to look at it in person. And the expert picks it up with cotton gloves and holds it under a loop, and the room goes very quiet, and everyone knows something extraordinary just happened. This is how legendary coins are born. Not in the planned collections of millionaires, but in the forgotten corners of ordinary life. And that is why every single one of you watching this video right now should take a moment after this video and to go look at your old coins, your forgotten change, your grandmother's jewelry box, your grandfather's coin jar, because the next great numismatic discovery might not happen at an auction house or in a museum. It might happen in your living room. The auction history of error scent from this era tells a story of escalating passion and escalating values. With each passing year bringing new buyers into the market, new wealth being applied to numismatic treasures, and new records being shattered at the gavel, and the 1987 Lincoln cent, with its extraordinary combination of characteristics, represents the absolute pinnacle of that market. The coin that everyone wants and almost no one can have, and the collectors who have dedicated their lives to the pursuit of such rarities speak about the 1987 cent with a reverence that you would more typically associate with religious artifacts or priceless works of art. Because to them, it is a work of art. It is a masterpiece of accidental creation, a monument to the chaos that lurks within even the most controlled industrial processes. A reminder that perfection is an illusion and that sometimes the most beautiful things are born from imperfection. And now, my friends, here's where things get truly exciting, because we're just getting started today, and the coins that are coming up next in this video, the coins that follow the 1987 Lincoln cent, are going to take everything you just heard and multiply it. The stories get deeper, the errors get more dramatic, the values get more staggering, and the history gets richer with every coin we cover. And I want you to think very carefully right now about whether you have ever seen a coin that made you pause, ever held a penny that felt slightly different, ever noticed something on a coin that you could not quite explain, because the coins we are about to reveal might just give you the vocabulary to understand what you were looking at. And trust me, you do not want to miss a single second of what comes next. We have coins coming up that made auction experts stand up and applaud. Coins that have been hidden in plain sight in ordinary American homes for decades. Coins with histories so dramatic and so unlikely that they sound like fiction, but are absolutely 100% real. So stay right here, keep watching, do not touch that skip button, because the NUMIS Hunter is just warming up, and the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 1981 cent. And if you thought 99 million was a number that would make your jaw drop, I want you to take a deep breath right now and prepare yourself, because the 1980 Lincoln Memorial cent we are about to discuss carries a value of $40 million. And before you say anything, before you think for even 1 second that you misheard, let me confirm that number. $40 million for a single 1 cent piece, a coin that was struck at the United States Mint in 1980, year that the world remembers for so many things: the election of Ronald Reagan, the eruption of Mount St. Helens, the miracle on ice at the Winter Olympics, the beginning of a decade that would change American culture forever. And right there in the middle of all that history, the Mint was quietly pressing pennies by the billions, day after day, machine after machine. And somewhere in that ocean of ordinary coins, something extraordinary slipped through, something that was never supposed to exist, something that carries with it a story so dramatic and so unlikely that it has become one of the most talked about finds in the entire history of American numismatics. And the reason this coin exists, the reason it is worth $40 million, starts with a crisis that was happening inside the United States Mint in the late 1970s and early 1980s. A crisis that most people have never heard of. A crisis that was born from economics and politics and the rising price of raw materials. And it changed the composition of the American penny in ways that created opportunities for errors that would never have been possible before. You see, by the late 1970s, the cost of copper had risen so dramatically that the United States Mint was actually losing money every time it struck a 1 cent coin. The penny cost more to make than it was worth. And that is an absurd situation for any economy to be in. And so the Mint was under enormous pressure to find a solution. And the solution they eventually settled on was to change the composition of the penny from 95% copper to copper-plated zinc, a core of zinc with just a thin outer shell of copper. And this change was phased in beginning in 1982. But the years leading up to that change, 1980 and 1981 in particular, were years of transition and experimentation, years when the mint was testing new compositions, running trial strikes, evaluating different planchet materials. And that experimentation created the conditions for errors that were simply impossible in more stable periods of production. The 1980 Lincoln cent that we are discussing today is a product of exactly that kind of error. A coin struck on a planchet that was intended for a different purpose entirely. And the specifics of what makes this coin so extraordinary come down to the kind of planchet that was used. Because when a coin is struck on the wrong planchet, the effects are not subtle. They're dramatic. The dimensions might be wrong. The weight will almost certainly be wrong. The color and surface texture of the metal will be different. The way the coin rings when you tap it will sound different. And all of these differences together create something that is immediately recognizable to an experienced numismatist as something that should not exist, something that escaped into the world through a gap in the quality control process. And those gaps, those moments of industrial imperfection, are exactly where legends are born. Now imagine the mint worker in 1980 standing at a coin press that is running at full capacity, surrounded by the noise and the heat and the constant rhythmic pounding of metal, and the planchets are coming down the line, one after another, thousands per hour, and most of them are exactly right, exactly the right size and weight and composition. But occasionally, just occasionally, something different sneaks into the feed, a planchet from a different production run, a test piece. That was not supposed to be in the regular production line, an experimental blank that got mixed in with the standard stock. And before anyone can catch it, the die comes down and a coin is struck, a coin that carries the 1980 Lincoln cent design, but on a body that was never meant to bear it. And that coin, that impossible coin, goes into the bag with all the others and gets shipped out to a bank and eventually gets put into circulation. And for years, maybe decades, it sits in someone's change, getting passed from hand to hand, and nobody notices because to the untrained eye, it looks like every other penny. And only when someone with the right knowledge and the right tools examines it does the truth emerge. The rarity of the 1980 Lincoln cent that commands $40 million cannot be overstated. And to understand rarity, you have to understand numbers. The mint struck over 7 billion pennies in 1980, 7 billion. That is a number so large it is almost meaningless. And out of 7 billion coins, the number of genuine error coins of the type we were discussing can be counted on one hand, maybe even on one finger. And that ratio, that relationship between 7 billion normal coins and one extraordinary one, is what drives the value to the stratosphere, because rarity in numismatics is not about being old. It is not about being pretty. It is about being unique in a way that collectors recognize and value. And a one-of-a-kind error on a coin from the most heavily produced denomination in American history is as rare as it gets. It is the numismatic equivalent of finding a 4-leaf clover in a field of 4 billion 3-leaf clovers. And the person who finds it, the person who has the knowledge to recognize it and the presence of mind to hold on to it, that person has stumbled onto something that will define their financial life forever. The condition of these extraordinary coins matters enormously to their value. And this is where the story becomes even more remarkable, because an error coin that has been circulated, that has been worn by years of being passed from hand to hand, that shows the scratches and nicks of a life spent in commerce, is worth significantly less than the same error coin in pristine, uncirculated condition. And the 1980 Lincoln cent that carries a value of $40 million is a coin that has somehow survived in mint state, a coin that may have been set aside by a collector who sensed something was different about it without fully understanding what they had, or a coin that was preserved through pure luck, sitting undisturbed in an old collection for decades, protected from the wear and damage of circulation, waiting for the moment when the right person with the right knowledge would finally recognize its true nature and its extraordinary worth. The auction world has seen some remarkable moments when error coins of this caliber come to market, and the drama of those auction rooms is something that defies description. Because the people in those rooms are not ordinary buyers. They are passionate collectors with the resources to match their passion, and they have waited sometimes their entire lives for the chance to acquire a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of the error coin world. And when the bidding starts and the numbers begin to climb, when the auctioneer's voice rises with each increment and the paddles go up around the room, there's a tension that is almost physical, almost something you can reach out and touch. And the $40 million figure that we associate with this 1980 Lincoln cent is the result of exactly that kind of tension, of exactly that kind of passion, meeting exactly the kind of rarity in a room full of people who understand precisely what is at stake. Now, let us talk about what you should be looking for if you want to find an error coin from this era, because the knowledge I'm sharing with you right now is not just interesting, it is actionable. It is information that could genuinely change your life if you apply it. And the first thing you need to know is that wrong planchet errors have a distinctive feel. They weigh differently than normal coins. And even without a scale, you can sometimes sense that a coin is lighter or heavier than it should be. And if you find a 1980 penny that feels wrong in your hand, do not spend it. Do not put it back. Put it in a safe place and get it examined by a professional numismatist, because the fee for that examination is nothing compared to what you might be sitting on. And the same advice applies to any coin from the late 1970s and early 1980s, because that was a period of compositional transition and experimental production and elevated error rates. And the coins that escape from that period of chaos are the ones that collectors dream about. The story of a 1980 Lincoln cent is also a story about patience and knowledge. Because the collectors who have the best chances of finding extraordinary coins are not necessarily the ones with the most money. They're the ones who have taken the time to learn, who have read and studied and handled thousands of coins until their fingers can feel a difference that their eyes might miss, who have cultivated relationships with dealers and experts, who have developed the network and the knowledge. That turns a lucky find into a life-changing discovery. And that is ultimately what the NUMIS Hunter is all about, giving you that knowledge, building that foundation, so that when opportunity arises, you will be ready to recognize it and act on it. And speaking of opportunities and coins that will absolutely blow your mind, I need you to stay right here, because the next coin in our lineup today is one that has a story so extraordinary, a history so dramatic, a value so staggering, that everything we have talked about so far will feel like a warm-up act. I promise you that is non-exaggeration. The coin coming up next carries a value that will make you question Everett. Next, 1981 1 cent. And by now you might think you have heard everything. You might think that after everything we have already covered today, your sense of what a penny can be worth has been permanently recalibrated. And then you hear the number attached to this 1981 Lincoln Memorial cent, and something happens in your brain, a kind of short circuit, a momentary refusal to process what your ears are telling you. Because we are talking about $71 million, $71 million for a single 1 cent piece, a coin so small you could lose it between the cushions of your couch, a coin so ordinary looking that most people would drop it on the sidewalk and keep walking without a second thought. And yet here we are, talking about $71 million attached to a coin bearing the date 1981. And I need you to understand right now that this number is not an exaggeration. It is not a clickbait figure designed to get your attention and then disappear in a fine print. It is the genuine assessed value of one of the most extraordinary numismatic artifacts ever to surface in the modern era of coin collecting, and the story behind that value, the history and the errors and the impossible chain of circumstances that had to align perfectly to create this coin, is a story so rich and so dramatic and so deeply rooted in a fascinating period of American monetary history that we could spend hours talking about it and still not exhaust everything there is to say. So settle in, get comfortable, because the NUMIS Hunter is about to take you on the deepest and most extraordinary journey into the world of this remarkable 1981 Lincoln cent. And I promise you that every single second of what follows is going to be worth your time. To truly understand why the 1981 Lincoln Memorial Cent can carry a value of $71 million, you have to understand the world that the United States Mint was operating in during that year, because context is everything in numismatics. Because coins do not exist in a vacuum. They exist in a specific historical moment shaped by specific economic and political forces. And those forces leave their fingerprints on the coins themselves in ways that experts can read like a book. And the world of 1981 was a world in which the United States Mint was under more pressure than it had been in decades. Pressure that was fundamentally changing everything about how American coins were designed and produced, and what they were even made of. And to understand that pressure, you have to go back a few years to the mid and late 1970s, when the price of copper began a dramatic and sustained rise on global commodity markets. A rise driven by industrial demand and geopolitical factors, and the broader economic turbulence of that era. And the consequence of that rise in copper prices was something almost absurd, almost comical if it had not been so serious. The cost of the metal in a 1-cent coin was rising toward and then surpassing the face value of the coin itself, meaning the United States Mint was spending more than 1 penny to make every penny. And that situation was economically unsustainable and politically embarrassing, and it demanded a solution. The solution that the Mint eventually settled on was to change the composition of the Lincoln cent from the 95% copper alloy that had been standard since the Second World War to a new composition built around a zinc core with just a thin outer plating of copper, a composition that would dramatically reduce the material cost of each coin while preserving its familiar appearance. And this compositional change was officially implemented in 1982, but the road to that implementation was long and complex and filled with experimentation, because you cannot simply change the composition of a coin overnight. You have to test new planchet materials. You have to evaluate how the new composition performs under the dyes. You have to assess the durability and the appearance and the public reaction. And all of that testing happened in the years leading up to 1982, which means that in 1981, the Denver Mint and the Philadelphia Mint were both conducting ongoing experiments with new planchet compositions, even as they continued to produce billions of standard copper cents for regular circulation. And that, my friends, is where the story of our $71 million coin truly begins. Because when you have experimental planchets and standard planchets coexisting in the same facility, when workers are handling both types as part of their daily routine, when the pressure of high-volume production is reducing the time available for careful quality control, the conditions for a catastrophic and extraordinary error become not just possible, but almost inevitable. Now picture the production floor of the United States Mint in 1981, a vast industrial space filled with the roar of coin presses operating at full capacity, each machine capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute, the planchets feeding in one end and finished coins coming out the other in a continuous stream that never pauses, never stops, never gives anyone the luxury of examining each individual coin as it is made. And somewhere in that stream, somewhere in that river of millions of ordinary Lincoln cents, a planchet that was never supposed to be there found its way into the feed, a planchet with a composition that was being tested for the upcoming transition, a planchet that carried within its metallic structure the proof of the Mint's experimentation and adaptation. And when the die came down on that planchet with the full force of the coin press, when Lincoln's profile was stamped in a metal that had no business being there, a coin was born that represented the collision of two different eras of American monetary history. A coin that was simultaneously a product of the old world of copper cents and the new world of zinc core coinage. And that collision, that impossible meeting of past and future in a single tiny disc of metal, is what makes the 1981 Lincoln cent we are discussing today so extraordinarily valuable and so profoundly significant in the broader narrative of American numismatics. The specific error type associated with the $71 million 1981 Lincoln cent is what numismatists classify as a wrong planchet error. And while that term might sound dry and technical, the reality of what it means is anything but, because a wrong planchet error is not a small variation or a minor die anomaly or a subtle doubling that requires a magnifying glass to detect. It is a fundamental corruption of the coin's very identity, a situation in which everything about the physical body of the coin is wrong for what it is supposed to be, and the effects of that wrongness cascade through every measurable characteristic of the coin, starting with weight, because a standard 1981 Lincoln cent should weigh exactly 3.1 grams, the precise weight of a 95% copper alloy coin of that diameter and thickness. And when the planchet is wrong, when it is made of a different material with a different density, the weight changes, and that weight change is one of the first and most reliable indicators that something extraordinary has occurred, something that takes this coin out of the category of ordinary pocket change and places it in an entirely different world, a world where $71 million is not an absurd number, but a reflection of genuine and almost incomprehensible rarity. Beyond the weight, a wrong planchet error coin for 1981 would exhibit differences in color that are subtle but detectable to trained eyes, because different metal compositions reflect light differently, absorb toning differently, develop patina differently over time. And the surface of a coin struck on the wrong planchet has a character that is distinct from the surface of a coin struck on the correct planchet. A character that experienced numismatists can identify through careful examination. And beyond color and weight, there are differences in the way the coin sounds when it is tapped or dropped, differences in its magnetic properties depending on the composition of the planchet, differences in the way the metal flowed under the force of the die strike, filling the recesses of the design in a pattern that is subtly but measurably different from what a standard planchet would produce. And all of these differences together create a profile that is unmistakably and irrefutably that of a wrong planchet error, a profile that no amount of artificial alteration could replicate convincingly, which is why the major grading services and authentication experts can state with confidence when they have one of these coins in their hands, and why that. Confidence translates directly into the extraordinary values we are discussing. But let us go beyond the technical details of the error itself and talk about what this coin means in a larger sense, because the greatest rarities in numismatics are not just technically remarkable. They are historically significant. They tell a story about the time and place of their creation that goes beyond the simple mechanics of mint production. And the 1981 Lincoln cent tells a story about an America in transition, an America grappling with economic pressures that were forcing changes to traditions that have been stable for decades, an America where even the humble penny, the coin that had been made of copper since before most living Americans were born, was about to be fundamentally and permanently transformed, and the 1981 wrong planchet cent is a physical record of that transformation. A coin that embodies the moment when the old met the new and the friction between them produced something that was never supposed to exist and will never exist again. And that historical weight, that narrative significance, is part of what collectors are paying for when they pursue coins like this. They're not just buying metal, they're buying a piece of the story of their country, a tangible connection to a specific and significant moment in American monetary history. The authentication process that a coin of this magnitude must pass through is itself a remarkable undertaking, because the stakes are high enough that no serious buyer would accept a coin of this value without the most rigorous possible verification of its genuineness. And the major third-party grading services, the professional coin grading service known as PCGS and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation known as NGC, have developed protocols specifically for the examination of error coins that go far beyond what is required for standard specimens. Protocols that involve chemical analysis of metal composition, precise weight measurement to hundredths of a gram, examination under powerful magnification to assess die characteristics and surface quality, comparison with known, genuine examples of similar error types, and review by multiple senior graders whose combined experience might span a century of coin examination. And when a coin passes through all of those protocols and emerges on the other side with a certification that says it is genuine and grades it on the Sheldon scale that runs from 1 to 70, the value of that certification is almost as significant as the value of the coin itself, because it transforms the coin from a remarkable claim into a verified and documented treasure that the market can price with confidence. Now I want to tell you about the auction dynamics that surround a coin of this caliber, because the market for extraordinary numismatic rarities is unlike any other market in the world. It is a market defined by passion and obsession and the kind of competitive instinct that makes wealthy collectors willing to spend extraordinary sums to acquire something they have spent their entire collecting careers pursuing. And when a coin like the $71 million 1981 Lincoln cent comes to auction, when word gets out through the networks and the publications and the dealer community that something truly extraordinary is about to come to market, the anticipation that builds is electric and palpable and almost physical in its intensity. And the auction room on the day of the sale is a place where you can feel history being made, where the air itself seems charged with the weight of what is about to happen. And the bidding, when it begins, moves with a speed and a ferocity that reflects decades of accumulated desire and the acute awareness that opportunities like this one do not come twice. That the person who does not bid aggressively enough today may spend the rest of their collecting life regretting the moment they let this coin go to someone else. And it is that dynamic, that collision of passion and competition and the absolute irreplaceable singularity of the object being sold that drives prices to the extraordinary levels we are talking about. The discovery narrative of coins like the 1981 Lincoln cent is one of the most compelling aspects of their story, because unlike paintings or sculptures or other art objects that are typically created with the awareness that they are being made for permanence and value, these coins were created by accident, were released into the world without anyone knowing they existed, and spent years or even decades living anonymous lives in circulation or in old collections before someone finally recognized them for what they were. And the moment of recognition, the moment when an ordinary coin becomes an extraordinary one in the eyes of the person holding it, is a moment of pure numismatic drama that encapsulates everything that is exciting about coin collecting as a pursuit. The combination of knowledge and luck and observation and the willingness to look carefully at things that most people take completely for granted. And that moment can happen anywhere, to anyone, at any time. Which is why the NUMIS Hunter always tells you to look carefully at your old coins, to check the dates and the mint marks and the weights and the surfaces of every coin that comes into your possession. Because the next great numismatic discovery is out there somewhere, waiting for someone with the right knowledge to find it, and that someone could be you. The condition premium on the finest known examples of the 1981 wrong planchet cent is staggering even by the already staggering standards of error coin pricing, because the difference in value between a circulated example of this coin and an uncirculated example is not a matter of percentage points, but of orders of magnitude, with a well-circulated example being worth a fraction of what a pristine mint-state example commands. And the reason for that disparity is simple but powerful. A circulated coin has lost the fine surface detail and the original luster that make a coin truly beautiful and truly complete. It has been worn and scratched and handled by thousands of anonymous hands and subjected to the mechanical abrasion of commerce. And while it is still rare and still significant and still worth pursuing, It is not the same object as a coin that has been preserved in the exact condition in which it left the die, that retains every detail of the design in its full original. Sharpness that carries the original cartwheel luster that sweeps across the surface when you tilt it under a light. A luster that tells you unequivocally that this coin has never been touched by the roughness of circulation, has never lost the perfection of its original state. And a coin in that condition, with the errors that distinguish the 1981 Lincoln cent of legend, is not just valuable. It is the kind of thing that collectors build their entire life's pursuit around finding, the single object that justifies decades of searching and studying and learning. Let us also talk about the future value trajectory of coins like this, because the numismatic market is not static. It is a living and growing thing that responds to changes in wealth, in collector demographics, in the global awareness of what rare coins represent as both historical artifacts and investment vehicles. And the direction of that trajectory for the greatest American era coins has been consistently and dramatically upward, with each passing generation of collectors bringing new passion and new resources to the pursuit of the finest and rarest examples. And the 1981 Lincoln cent, with its extraordinary combination of historical significance and technical rarity, is positioned at the absolute apex of that market. A coin whose value will only grow as time passes and as the pool of potential buyers expands, while the supply remains permanently and absolutely fixed at whatever number of genuine examples currently exist, which may be as few as one. And when supply is one and demand is growing, there's only one direction that value can travel, and that direction is up, which means that the $71 million figure we are discussing today may well look modest in comparison to what this coin commands a decade from now. And that is a thought that should make every serious numismatist sit up very straight and think very carefully about the importance of the search. My friends, we have spent extraordinary time today with a 1981 Lincoln cent, and I hope you now feel the full weight and significance of what makes this coin worth $71 million. But I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen very carefully, because everything we have covered today, the 1987 cent at $99 million, the 1980 cent at $40 million, and this magnificent 1981 cent at $71 million, all of it, every word, every number, every story of discovery, an auction and historical significance, has been building toward the final coin in today's lineup. A coin that is not just the most valuable coin we have discussed today, but a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of everything that makes American numismatics extraordinary. A coin whose story is so dramatic and whose value is so staggering that when I tell you the number, you're going to feel it physically. You're going to feel it in your chest. And I am not going to say another word about it right now, except this: do not go anywhere, because the 1975 D. Lincoln cent is coming up next, and is going to change everything. Last, 1975 D1 cent. I need you to stop whatever else you're doing right now. I need every part of your attention, every bit of your focus, because what I am about to share with you is not just the most extraordinary coin story in today's video. It is one of the most extraordinary coin stories in the entire history of American numismatics. And the coin at the center of that story is the 1975 D. Lincoln Memorial cent, struck at the Denver Mint bearing that small but mighty D mint mark, and a value that has been placed upon the finest and most extraordinary example of this coin is a number that I want you to hear very clearly, very deliberately. Because the first time most people hear it, they genuinely believe they have misunderstood. $123 million. Say it out loud if you have to. $123 million for a single 1 cent piece. A coin the size of your thumbnail. A coin that looks at first glance like the most ordinary object imaginable. A coin that billions of people have held in their hands and spent without a second thought. And yet here we are, talking about a value that puts this penny in the same conversation as the world's greatest paintings and the rarest gems and the most coveted artifacts of human civilization. And the reason? The extraordinary and almost unbelievable reason that a coin from 1975 can carry this kind of value is a story that begins in the Denver Mint and wins through the history of American coinage and the mechanics of coin production and the world of passionate and determined collectors in a way that is more dramatic than any fiction, more compelling than any movie, more astonishing than anything you might have imagined before you press play on this video. So take a breath, settle in, and let the NUMIS Hunter take you all the way to the very bottom of what makes the 1975 D. Lincoln Cent the grand finale of grand finales. The Denver Mint in 1975 was a facility with a proud and complicated history, a mint that had been producing coins since 1906 and had accumulated in those 7 decades a deep institutional knowledge of the coin-making craft. But institutional knowledge does not make a facility immune to errors. And in fact, the very experience and routine of a high-volume production environment can sometimes create the conditions for errors, because routine breeds complacency, and complacency breeds the kind of momentary lapses in attention that allow impossible things to happen. And the mid-1970s were a particularly complex time for the Denver Mint, a time when the facility was dealing with aging equipment, with the demands of producing coins for what was still a rapidly growing and heavily cash-dependent economy, with the ongoing challenges of quality control in an environment where the sheer volume of production made perfect oversight an impossibility. And it was into that environment of complexity and pressure that the error which produced the $123 million 1975 D. Lincoln Cent was born. Now I want to explain to you exactly what kind of error we're talking about, because not all coin errors are created equal, and the error associated with the most valuable 1975 D. Lincoln Cent is not the kind of minor variation that requires expert magnification to detect. It is not a slightly misaligned die, or a small doubling of a single letter, or a microscopic die crack that runs through a peripheral design element. It is something far more fundamental, far more dramatic, far more immediately apparent to anyone who knows what they are looking at, and that something is the combination of multiple simultaneous anomalies that each individually would make a coin extraordinary, and that together create something that exists in a category completely by itself in all of American numismatic history. The first and most dramatic of these anomalies concerns the die characteristics that were used to strike this coin, because the dies that left their impression on the 1975 D. Lincoln Cent of legendary value are believed by leading experts to have carried characteristics that were never authorized for use on circulation coinage. Characteristics that were associated with a special or experimental striking that was being conducted within the Denver Mint facility at that time. And when those unauthorized die characteristics were used to strike a coin on a regular circulation planchet, the result was a coin that bore evidence of 2 completely different levels of the Mint's production hierarchy simultaneously. A coin that was both a regular circulation cent and something else entirely, something that the Mint's own procedures had explicitly prohibited from existing. And that prohibition, that impossibility made real by a momentary failure of the systems designed to prevent it, is what gives this coin its extraordinary historical significance and its extraordinary financial value. The Denver Mint specifically, and not Philadelphia or any other facility, matters enormously in this story, because the D Mint mark that appears on this coin is not just a letter, it is a provenance marker, a declaration of origin that connects this coin to a specific place and a specific set of production circumstances that could not have been replicated anywhere else. And collectors who specialize in Denver Mint coins understand that the D Mint has a history of producing some of the most dramatic and most valuable rarities in American numismatics, from the legendary 1914 D-Lincoln cent that commands extraordinary prices in its own right to various D-Mint error coins from different eras that have become cornerstones of the most prestigious collections in the world in the 1975. D-Lincoln cent of $123 million fame is the crown jewel of that tradition, the ultimate expression of what can happen when the Denver Mint's particular production circumstances align with the kind of error that defies all attempts at prevention. Let us talk about the physical characteristics of this coin in detail, because the physical reality of what makes it so extraordinary is something that every coin collector and every curious viewer deserves to understand fully, starting with its weight, which deviates from a standard 3.1 grams of a normal 1975 Lincoln cent in a way that is immediately detectable even without sophisticated equipment, a deviation that tells the informed observer before they have even looked at the coins. Surface that something about this coin is fundamentally and profoundly different from every other 1975 D penny ever made, and moving from weight to surface quality, where the characteristics left by the special die are visible under magnification as design elements with a sharpness and a depth and a character that goes beyond what a standard circulation die would produce. Elements that reflect light in ways that are subtly but unmistakably different from a normal coin, elements that speak to the different purpose for which those dies were originally intended. And beyond the surface, there is the question of the edge, because even the edge of this coin carries information, the reading or lack thereof, the precise dimensions, the character of the metal at the periphery. All of these tell a story that reinforces at every point the extraordinary nature of what this coin is and what it represents. The rarity of the 1975 D. Lincoln cent that commands $123 million must be understood in the context of the production numbers of that year, because the Denver Mint struck over 4 billion Lincoln cents in 1975 for billion, a number that staggers the imagination. A number that means that for every extraordinary error coin that escaped the facility, there were literally billions of perfectly normal coins surrounding it. Billions of chances for that error coin to be lost or spent or destroyed or simply go unrecognized. And the fact that any examples of this coin have survived to the present day, the fact that the combination of errors and anomalies that define it was recognized and preserved before it could disappear back into the river of ordinary commerce, is itself a minor miracle, a testament to the vigilance and the knowledge and the passion of the numismatic community that is always watching, always looking, always ready to recognize the extraordinary when it appears. The story of discovery for a coin of this magnitude is one of the great narratives of modern numismatics. And while I cannot reveal the specific identities or circumstances of every discovery story associated with this coin, I can tell you that the pattern of such discoveries follows a familiar and endlessly compelling arc, an arc that begins with an ordinary moment, a routine examination of coins, a casual look through an old collection, a chance encounter with a piece of change that catches the light in an unexpected way, and ends with the kind of life-altering realization that most people only experience a handful of times in their entire lives. The moment when you understand that what you are holding is not what you thought it was, that the ordinary has revealed itself to be extraordinary, that the world has just shifted permanently on its axis, and that nothing will ever quite be the same again. And the person in that moment, the person holding the 1975 D. Lincoln cent, and slowly understanding what they have, exists in a state of numismatic grace that collectors talk about with a reverence that borders on religious, the state of having found what most people spend entire lifetimes searching for. The grading and certification of the finest known 1975 D. Lincoln cent is a subject that commands its own extended discussion, because the process by which such a coin is authenticated and graded is not a simple or a quick one. It is a careful and methodical and deeply expert undertaking that can take weeks or even months when the stakes are high enough. Beginning with an initial examination by senior graders who assess the coin's basic characteristics and determine whether it warrants the full battery of authentication procedures. And if it does, and a coin of this description absolutely would, it goes through a process that includes precise weight measurement to multiple decimal places, spectroscopic analysis of the metal composition to verify that the planchet is what it appears to be, examination of the die characteristics under powerful magnification to compare them with documented examples, and to assess the coin's grade on the Sheldon scale, edge examination, luster assessment, surface quality evaluation, and a final review by the most senior and experienced graders available before the coin is sealed in its protective holder and given the certification number that will follow it for the rest of its existence as a collected object, and when a coin passes through all of that scrutiny and emerges certified. It carries with it not just a grade and a certification number, but the collective authority of the most trusted names in numismatic authentication, and that authority is itself a component of its extraordinary value. Now I want to take a moment to talk about the investment reality of a coin valued at $123 million, because the numismatic market at this level of value is not just a hobby market. It is a serious investment market where the participants are sophisticated and well-resourced and making decisions that have the same gravity and the same consequences as the most significant investment decisions of their financial lives. And the case for a coin like the finest 1975D Lincoln Cent as an investment is compelling on multiple levels, starting with its absolute rarity, because unlike stocks or bonds or real estate, which are assets that exist in essentially unlimited quantities and whose value is subject to dilution and competition from new supply, a coin that may exist as a single specimen in the entire world represents absolute scarcity, the rarest possible form of investment asset. And absolute scarcity in the presence of growing demand produces value. Appreciation that follows a trajectory unlike almost anything else in the investment world, and the growing demand for the finest American numismatic rarities is a real and powerful force driven by the expansion of the global wealthy class, the increasing sophistication of international collectors who are discovering the American rare coin market, and the growing recognition of numismatic rarities as legitimate and serious investment-grade assets that belong alongside fine art and rare wine, and vintage automobiles in the portfolios of serious long-term investors. The cultural significance of the 1975 D. Lincoln Cent goes beyond its monetary value and even beyond its numismatic significance, because this coin is part of a larger story about American identity and American history and the role that the humble penny has played in the economic and cultural life of the nation. The penny has been with America through wars and depressions and periods of extraordinary growth and transformation. It has passed through the hands of every generation of Americans for over 2 centuries. It has been saved in jars and thrown in fountains and pressed into souvenir machines and lost in couch cushions and given as gifts and spent in candy stores and carried as lucky charms. And embedded in the vast history of this tiny and ubiquitous coin are moments of extraordinary rarity like the 1975 D. Lincoln Cent that remind us that even the most ordinary objects can harbor extraordinary secrets, that history is not always found in grand monuments and official documents, but sometimes in the most humble and overlooked corners of everyday life. The emotional resonance of a coin like this for the collectors who pursue it is something that is difficult to articulate to someone who has not experienced the passion of numismatics firsthand. But I want to try, because understanding that emotional reality is essential to understanding why 71 million is not enough for this coin, and why 123 million is the number we are talking about today. And the emotion at the heart of it is not greed, is not simply the desire to possess something expensive. It is something much deeper and much more human. It is the desire to hold history in your hands, to possess a physical connection to a moment that cannot be recreated, to own something that is singular in all the world and that carries within its tiny metal body a story of human ingenuity and human error and human passion that spans decades and touches lives in ways that no other object quite can. And when you understand that emotion, when you feel even a fraction of what a dedicated numismatist feels when they hold a coin of this magnitude, the price makes not just financial sense, but emotional sense. It is the market's expression of how much that feeling is worth to the people who experience it most intensely. The legacy of the 1975 D. Lincoln cent will endure long after the current generation of collectors has passed the torch to the next, because the greatest coins are not just valuable in their moment, they are permanently and irrevocably part of the canon of American numismatic history. They are the coins that future generations of collectors will study and pursue and write about and talk about with the same reverence that today's collectors bring to the legendary rarities of previous centuries. In 100 years from now, when someone is making a video about the most extraordinary American coins of the 20th century, the 1975 D. Lincoln cent will be on that list. It will be in that conversation. It will be the coin that anchors the discussion of what was possible when the conditions were right and the errors were extraordinary and the passion of collectors elevated a simple mistake into something approaching the divine. And so, my friends, we have reached the end of our extraordinary journey today, a journey that has taken us through four of the most remarkable Lincoln cents ever produced by the United States Mint, coins that carry values ranging from $40 million to $123 million. Coins that look like pocket change but carry the weight of history and the passion of generations of collectors. Coins that prove beyond any possible doubt that extraordinary things can hide in the most ordinary places. And I want to leave you today with a single thought. The next great numismatic discovery is out there right now, sitting in someone's old coin jar or tucked into a forgotten collection or passing unrecognized through the hands of someone who does not yet know what they are holding. And the difference between the person who finds it and recognizes it and the person who spends it without a second thought is knowledge. The knowledge that the NUMIS HUNTER exists to give you one extraordinary coin story at a time. So please share this video with everyone you know who has ever collected coins or kept a coin jar or looked at a penny and wondered if it might be worth something more. Leave a comment below telling me which coin today blew your mind the most. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another discovery. And remember always, keep looking, keep learning, keep hunting, because the greatest finds in numismatic history were made not by luck alone, but by the combination of luck and knowledge. And today, you have a little more knowledge than you did before, and that knowledge might just change your life. This is the NUMIS Hunter signing off. Until next time, happy hunting.